Lawrence Brewers Guild meeting. We've got lots of exciting stuff going on today, including some special guests that'll be joining us. So glad you tuned in. Let's see, Frank, go ahead and hit that intro slide there. What? Tell us in the chat. What are you drinking? Who's there? Let us know you're watching, whether it be on Zoom here, or on YouTube, or on Facebook. But check in the chat so that way we can see what we got going on right now. I'm working an Ad Astra Ale. Figured get pre-started for our Lawrence beer later, but we'll go ahead and keep going through the slides. Keep commenting in, and we'll hit that in a little bit. We just want to keep on time here. We've got some upcoming events. We are working on trying to find some methods of doing the madness remotely. So we've got some events coming up. We'll here hitting the slides here. You want to go ahead and hit that next slide? All right. As we just got done, through December, we'll be hosting virtual hoppy hours via Zoom, like we just did. We were talking recent brews and all that other stuff. So, good talk on the habanero beer and some of those other stuff. Learned a homebrew day. Next slide there, Frank. The details are in the forum and on Facebook. Speaking of Learn to Homebrew Day, a few of us celebrate it at our houses, brewing a batch of beer. Brian and I worked on a brown ale. Lee, what did you work on that day? What did you brew? And well, she's
oatmeal stout.
All right. If any of you other folks brewed on Learn to Homebrew Day this last Saturday, tell us what you did. So if you got pictures, post them up. We'll add them to our forum and our posts. But we'll go ahead and hit the next slide there. Let's see. All right. Shirts. We've offered a few pickups now, and Clint's been doing the by arrangement pickup, and he's actually gotten quite a few done, but we have a handful of you still to come pick up your shirt. So if you could, we'd appreciate if you make arrangements with Clint to come grab your shirt from his house. But we're glad to got to see as many as you did and exchange homebrew. I've still got a couple gluten-free beers to go that I got from somebody, so but I have been working through my homebrew stash I got those days. That was a good exchange. All right. And we can go ahead and pass through that. The big one starting now is officer nominations are live for our January election. Pretty much every single position is up. We've all done our 2-year max term in a row. And, it's been fun. It's been a very interesting presidency. 2019 versus 2020 were two very different years to do this. I'm sure the same can be said for all the other officers, but we are looking for fresh folks to help participate running the club. So that's where the nominations come in. If you've got a friend you think might be good for it, nominate them. Talk to them first. Don't surprise them with this. If you yourself are interested in serving as an officer, you can fill out nomination. If you're nervous about what does the position entail, you you're not familiar with what they do. We do have some of the bylaw info posted out there. We've got a pool of current and past officers that would be glad to talk to you about their position and what they've done or did and what you might need to do in the coming year if you were to get voted in. So feel free to reach out. Feel free to get those nominations in, and we will have our elections in January. All right, next slide. Holiday beer exchange. So we previously had business where we decided to postpone the in-person holiday party, which we normally do our commercial beer exchange during. We still want to have that opportunity to do our holiday beer exchange because with everybody's previous year hauls and stashes of beers, there's probably some good ones you might want to trade or get out there. So we're going to host it as a 2-part beer exchange. We're going to do a pair of dates where you can come drop it off. If you're in Lawrence, you can go to Lee's house on the dates shown on screen. If you're in Johnson County or the Kansas City area, I know we've got some club folks everywhere. My house is available as a drop. And in addition to the times I've listed, if you want to make special arrangements, shoot me a message. We just need them by Thursday night. So in the lead up to that is acceptable, but focus on those Wednesday, Thursday drop dates because, Frank, if you'll give us the next slide there. Lee and I are going to get all the beers together since you're dropping them off in 2 locations. We'll divvy them up, split them up, and then we'll reallocate them for pickup. So then Saturday, you'll come join us at our house again. Come pick it up off the table there. We'll leave your beers out and tell you who's what. So that way you can come get your beer and see what you drew from the prize. So that's how we'll be doing that. 2 parts, a drop off and a pickup date. So we'll go ahead and if anybody has any questions, feel free to hit us up in the chat, or we can at the end of the meeting readdress those if you're not sure how this is working or have a question about what you can drop off or what you can bring. We'll be sending out a reminder on this, so don't feel like this is the last and only time you'll hear about it. All right, next slide, Frank. Speaking of holiday parties, like we said, we're not gonna be able to do our big in-person holiday party, which there's the picture from last year. We're going to postpone that, but we are working on some sort of a virtual call during the day. Figuring out the time. It's not set yet, but kind of our usual thing. Come if you're brewing, you can broadcast from your brew day. If you're just wanting to hang out, talk about a beer you made, or shoot the breeze, you're welcome to do that. And we'll obviously be drinking some beers, probably some of the beers from the commercial beer exchange. Let's see, Steven Fritz. I see your question there on the 6-pack or equivalent. That it is 6-pack, or Lee, did we say is it 2 like larger format bottles is the count? Is that right?
I'd have to go look at what we've done in previous years,
Okay.
but that sounds right.
Steven, that sounds right that it's a 6-pack, or what, Frank? Sorry.
Yeah, so in history we have so if you take what 6 times 12 and get the number of ounces, I think like you can do the math. So if you have a 750 milliliter bottle, which some beers have that, you can just try to get close to that 6 times 12, which is what 48 ounces or something silly like that. It's kind of on an honor system. Like, you're going to be getting potentially a 6-pack from somebody, and if you give somebody 4 12-ounce beers, it's a little scummy. So just kind of like make sure that what you give is what you're willing to get, and everybody wins, right?
Yeah, I've definitely got some interesting beers from people's travels. I know that's a little muted this year, but I'm sure there's some stuff people are sitting on, some good stouts and stuff like that. I know I've got quite a few of aged beers that I might slip in there. So it's kind of an interesting random shoot of what you get back out. Let's see. I think our next slide is our treasures report. So I'll turn that over to Jake.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Hey, everybody. So this month we added one new member. So thank you. You know who you are. Appreciate that. And it is still not too late. Just remember, if you want to vote in the officer elections, you do need to be a paid member. So go ahead and hit me on the next slide, Frank. So beer money this month, we spent a little bit more than we brought in. We had, of course, that one membership, one T-shirt, and then Lynette spent some change on some books, but she got several really good ones. I've already checked out one of them, and I own one of the others already. So there's a couple of good ones in there. So we are our total is just under 6,000 now. So it's still holding pretty steady. I think we did pretty all right for the year given the circumstances. So Frank, go ahead and hit me the next slide. That brings us to down 131 for the month. As you can see, the trend versus last year, obviously a lot more steady this time of year without Brewfest. But like I said, still holding strong. So that's really it for Treasurer Report.
All right. I believe next up is our library report.
Yes, I bought books.
Yay.
Yay. So I bought a variety of different books. That first one that you see is about infusing liqueurs with different sorts of flavors. They got all sorts of different categories. You want to make a coffee flavored one, they got like a whole chocolate, coffee, Nutella flavored section. You want to use some herbs and spices, they got one of those. I'm thinking about buying one of these for books for myself because as I was flipping through it to catalog it, I was taking pictures of the recipes like every other page. So it looks like it'll be pretty fun. Next slide. Since IPAs are still and have always been a thing, here is a book about all sorts of different crazy flavors of different IPAs that you can make, including one with like guava and a jalapeno or habanero, sorry, and cucumber and all sorts of different things. They are different categories like herbs and spices, and one kind of sounds like, you know, a roasted vegetable holiday dish. So, someone wants to give that a try? I would be willing to taste it. Next slide. This one is, as it says, wild winemaking. They're all about 1 gallon batches, so you can make a variety of different types of wines. Again, fruit flavors, herb flavors, all sorts of fun things. Next slide. This one is all about farmhouse brewing, and it covers the history and brewing techniques of different regions in Belgium and the Netherlands that does farmhouse brewing. So if you want to try to make an authentic regional farmhouse brew, there you go. This book is all about yeast. It covers beer and bread, so I thought that would be interesting to try out. And it's got all sorts of information about cultivating yeast and stuff you need, and there's some basic beer recipes, and then there's some bread recipes. So, next slide. This one is about home distilling. If you want to give that a try, here's a book that will tell you about how to do that, and we've already had a review on it. It said that it's pretty comprehensive and useful. And that's all I know about that one. And that's it.
All right. Next up, we've got our Fresh on the Forum. As we previous hit in some business, there is additional info on the forum there. The officer nominations, I believe we've got the bylaws linked right there in the handy thread along with the nomination form, or you can just respond in the forum thread proper. You don't have to use the forum if you don't want. It's more of a convenience format. We're working on getting the details to the December holiday party published out there. That kind of got a placeholder for the moment. And we've been following along with the Johnson County Breweries ballot initiative to get the change to the food sales, and they did pass that. So there was a post replying on that. That's pretty exciting. And then we had some Brew Bash medal winners. I meant to have that up in front of me. I know Travis and Mike took home quite a few. And then we had, was Jamie our other winner there, I think? Which we share her with KCBM, so we'll still claim it in the win category. But yeah, it's exciting to have a few of you guys and gals out there winning medals at the Topeka Brew Bash, and if there's any Topeka people watching, it's pretty great we happen to get to do that, so thanks for hosting us. All right, and that's all I got for Fresh on the Forum. Lee, you ready to kick into our tasting? It looks like we're a couple minutes ahead of schedule, but that's not a bad thing.
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right.
I got my Bell's Two Hearted. I went with cans. Talking about it earlier, less likely to break a can on the patio. Looks like you got a bottle there, Ryan.
I did go bottle, so mainly for our future collab brew effort. So I had it handy and ready, or to delabel.
Oh, I just did a really bad pour. This is why I need a bartender, you guys. Okay. Well, I hadn't filled out a BJCP score sheet since, like, I don't know, last February or March or something. So last night I had a bells and filled out a score sheet. So I'm kind of gonna go off that to lead this. So assuming, well, I mean, look at the head on that. We can enjoy that for later.
There we go. There we go.
But the first category is aroma. You want to like smell it first. So what is everyone getting aroma wise off of this?
If you've got thoughts, put them in any of the chats, and we'll read them off there and see what the audience is feeling and smelling on this. We had a non-beer comment, hair compliment on Facebook for you, Lee. Doesn't cover the aroma situation, but just thought I'd tell you that was there.
Awesome. Yeah, I finally got professional help after I drunk cut my bangs a month ago.
You're asking about aroma, Lee, there? I mean, on the malt aspects, you know, well, one, the smell is definitely more hop forward than malt forward, just initially. But
what kind of hops are you getting in there? I get like orange peel, kind of citrusy,
yeah,
maybe a little like pine woodsy, definitely the Pacific Northwest hop variety.
Yeah, I got my notes here because I drank one earlier as a first round, so I'd be ready for this. I got the strong piney first, is what I said, but then as I smelled it on further, I started to get those citrus notes. As you said, now that I smell it again, I could see the orange specifically there. But it is definitely more hop forward aromas rather than a malt forward aroma. Hey Frank, will you go ahead and click to our second slide for the tasting real quick? Just
I'm seeing in the chat we got Citra-ish from Mike Metcalf. Greg, what did Greg say? Citrus and piney.
Yep.
Definitely. So fun fact, this beer is actually brewed with Centennial hops. So I mean, like they're cousin, or I don't know enough about genealogy, but they're close to citrus, same kind of family. But yeah, it's, I believe, exclusively Centennial hops. Anyone feel free to jump in and correct me. So appearance wise, what, like, it's kind of a golden, it's got some orange copper hues. The head, as I demonstrated, is very large, fluffy, white, persistent. What other observations do we have from the group on that?
Say it's kind of got a copperish orange color to it. Definitely a lot of golden orange tones to it, despite being a little darker. You know, it's not a straw color. You can tell there's some of that caramel malt in there.
Jamie and Stephanie, you're both BJCP judges. Feel free to chime in. Mike says amber copper. All right.
I didn't go buy one. I apologize. So
You're fine. You're good. We're trying something new, you know. I know you guys liked that we did the in-person tasting, started doing a couple virtual ones, and now we're ping-ponging right back off you with trying the virtual tastings. So,
well, should we move on to flavor because it's a bit more exciting?
I'm all excited about flavor when it comes to beer.
Yeah, I'd say this is definitely a hop-dominated beer. I mean, it is a classic example of a 21A American IPA. So that's pretty characteristic. I get like sharp citrus, orange, some grapefruit in there. It's got a nice bitter finish, but I still get some malty sweetness from it. Like it's balanced, it has enough backbone. What other thoughts do we have? Greg says not overly hoppy.
It's definitely, because it's the classic American, you get a lot more the hops designated towards bitterness rather than, you know, in the modern any IPA and other styles where it's all aroma and taste forward. Not that you don't have a lot of aroma and taste out of these, it's just there's a lot more balance towards that bitterness too. Let's see. Josh said grapefruit, citrus, pine, and even a little bit of orange zest flavor there. I said spicy, piney, and citrus for mine. I got a little bit of spicy on the taste.
I can see that. Yeah, yeah.
I think there's
I like
some.
the orange zest description.
Mm-hmm.
I was. I think there's some sort of sweet balance to this. I think some American style IPAs can get a little just. We want to make your mouth bitter and not like provide any flavor or balance or like. And some people really love those. And when I first started getting into IPAs, some 10, 12 years ago, that was like the thing people were going for. It was like, how terrible can my mouth feel after drinking this beer?
The
And
example.
I can't off the top of my head. It's hard to bring up samples because I've kind of pushed those to the back of my memory.
Oh, no,
but
I got one for you. Lagunitas is hop stupid. They even break the fourth wall with acknowledgement of what they're doing. But that's definitely that situation. It's a good one, but it's pushing the limits of what you want to drink on that front.
yeah, I like an IPA, and I've talked to some of our like more accomplished IPA brewers in our club, and a little bit of sweetness helps kind of even out the palate. A little bit of fruitiness or sort of citrus helps even out the palate. But yeah, there's a handful of beers out there that I don't care for simply because it seems to really dry everything out in your mouth and just kind of make it absurdly bitter for no reason. There's no flavor. There's no citrus to it. There's no. I don't know, maybe I'm not talented enough to taste the right things, but I'll still eat like a chili pepper, but taste fruit in it because it's kind of that helps balance that heat. And I think bitterness has a balance in sweetness and certain flavors. So
You talk about the sweetness with peppers and stuff. That's why I do prefer habaneros over jalapenos for the lack of the vegetable bitterness and more of those like fruit type notes to it. But let's see. It looks like Brian just unmuted himself. Or Nikki, were you guys gonna say something? Oh, never mind.
I see in chat Greg added limited malt flavor, which definitely that's characteristic to style. I still feel like I get a little bit of caramel malt in there, and you guys are talking about the malt sweetness for sure.
Mm.
Okay, so what do we think about the mouth feel of this? So that's like if you're thinking about like the body carbonation, if it's like creamy or astringent, what do you all think?
Frank, will you push the slide to full screen on that with the tasting sheet, just so that maybe people can read some of those type attribute. I don't know how readable that is. I definitely think it's moderately well carbonated, probably just above the middle line. It's definitely a little above the middle. It's got a nice tongue tingle when you're drinking it. It's kind of got a creamy aspect to it. The carbonation and all that head on there, you can kind of feel it roll down your tongue. But it's tasty.
Yeah, I agree with the carbonation. I commented it was medium high carbonation. I said like medium body. I mean, it's got that solid malt backbone. It has enough body, but I wouldn't call it creamy. And I get just like a little astringency, I would say, from the hops. What about, does anyone else pick that up?
A little bit maybe. Just definitely the longer, and this is the second one I've had today, the more I drink of it, the more the hops are just, carrying along. But that's why you can't do a bunch of IPAs in a row and expect as strong of a pickup the next round.
I
Josh?
like Josh's description, dangerously drinkable. Yes.
Yeah. Full-bodied, balanced, and dangerously drinkable.
I might have been a little buzzed when I filled out my BJCP score sheet on this last night because I finished with tote slammable. So
Slamming was had. All right, well, we can go ahead and hit the next slide. Unless anybody wants to say something. Lee, did we have some more notes to do on the tasting, or we made it through all of our categories?
Yes, we did. Does anyone have anything else to add? Like, this was one of my favorite original IPAs back before we had all the any IPAs, and they were even when there was more limited commercial availability. Anyone want to reminisce on that?
Which
I always thought like modus operandi was the like IPA of IPAs when I commercially available IPAs were
I drank that so much.
yeah, that and the Sierra Nevada IPA I think were like in Kansas, when what we could get in Kansas at the time. I think
Yeah.
that was the two.
I used to drink so many of both of those, and I don't think I've had either of those in a couple of years now. It is funny how the more available it comes, the further we've branched out, just hitting all these new items. All right.
All right, I'm going back to the chat, and Stephanie said it generally finishes pretty dry with moderate astringency. Definitely agree with that. Mike Metcalf gave it a 4.25. Josh agrees modus operandi is nostalgic. First canned IPA he could get. All right. Oh, and John Pepin pointed out it was Zymergy's best of the year for the last 2 years. So we're
Well,
on to something here.
Yeah. Well, and Jared said I'm not sure which beer because we mentioned so many, but one of those we've touted out was Jared says is one of the best beers ever. So
I'm gonna guess Bell's Two Hearted. I mean,
yeah,
feel that
given the years he just gave, because I don't think Modus has been circulating that long.
I'm gonna step in, Ryan, and we got a couple
Yep.
minutes. We got our guests on the call right now, and we got 2 more slides left. So.
Yep. So let's go ahead and hit that. So why we started with this as the tasting, because we want to do an upcoming club member brewed tasting. And so we're going to collect signups tonight. We're going to post the link here in a minute. For folks who want to participate in this, we're going to ask you to brew a clone batch. We're going to give you the ingredients as it says there. We're going to give you the grain. We're going to give you the hops, and we're going to prepare yeast and have that ready for you. And we're even going to give you the recipe card. And I have got a Beersmith file if that's your software of choice. So I can just hand off that Beersmith file for you. If you use that to run your brew day, you'll be able to run it like you normally would. And then on the next slide there, Frank, well, we do need 5 volunteers. I guess that's on this slide. But here's the rough timeline. We're going to collect those signups now here today. And if we don't get all 5, we'll start poking tomorrow. But I imagine we'll get 5 today. The supply pickup, the timeline on that's approximate. We can make specific arrangements with the volunteers, whoever's deciding to brew, but I'm aiming for next week. We'll pick up supplies. Then you'll have 6 weeks to brew it, ferment it, clear it, and bottle it, and bring them back that first week of January. Every person brewing is going to return 36 bottles. We are going to try it. If you don't have bottles, we're working on collecting and getting you those bottles. So we will work with that, but we're aiming for 36 bottles per brewer. So that way we can do that many samples. And then on January 7th and 9th, we'll offer pickups for our club members to come grab a 5-pack of these member brewed Bell's Two Hearted colognes. And then just like we did tonight in both the January and February meeting, we're going to split them up so you don't have to drink 5 beers in one night, or at least that's at your discretion. We're going to do a few on January meeting and a few on February meeting, and kind of talk through what we get out of it. It's not necessarily a who brewed it better or who, this isn't a judging competition. We are collecting info on everybody that's brewing, what equipment they use, some of their process stuff, how they bottle, because you can keg carbonate, force carbonate. You can also bottle condition, just all the different methods between our brew styles, how those can yield slightly different results with the same ingredients, same recipe, and same desired beer. So we're going to kind of do some tasting notes on how equipment and procedures and methods can yield some different results on a familiar, pretty standard beer. Like we said, this is one of the BJCP examples for American IPA. So this is, you might jokingly call textbook definition. So we're hoping that all 5 of the returned ones will be in that realm and we'll be able to compare because of that. Let's see, Lee, I see your note there. So we just need a minute longer. Is that what I get out of that?
I think we're getting
Is
close.
there? Okay.
We also have another
We have
slide to go to. One more slide, and
Oh yeah, that's right. We do have one more slide, so we'll hit that real fast.
I just wanted to ask, because we've got some good people on this call right now. Is anyone interested in doing the Bell's Two Hearted clone? Anyone off the top of their head want to raise their hand or anything? I mean, there is a sign up on the form, but I'm just gauging things right now.
And I'm posting them in the chats now, so that way you can click it.
So speaking of forums, if anybody's a member or not a member and wants to join the forums, they're out there. If you are a member, if you're not a member, let me rewind that. If you want to make an account, to make an account in the forums, you have to use the password Brewday, all one word, all lowercase. This is the best way we found to keep Russian spam bots off of our forums. Because if I turn that off, within about 2 hours, I get about 6 different new accounts that all have Russian, Kazakhstan, or Thai IP addresses that try to join our forums, and they obviously aren't interested in brewing beer in the middle of the United States. So the password is Brewday, Brewday, all lowercase, all one word. But there's a free section. I don't know. Is this going to be the members only part, Brian?
The sign up link is probably going to be,
Yeah.
well, we can do it however. I mean, it is theoretically on the Facebook video where anybody can get to it, so we can post it in the general section.
Yeah.
And
But
we'll see who's replying.
Point is for members only. If you are a paid member and you haven't made an account yet, and you do make that account, let us know so we can bump you into the paid member section. So there's a few extra like bonuses you get, like some things you get to see, which typically is Brewfest related, but obviously they didn't happen this year, but it will in the future. Yeah. Get a little plug for the internet stuff.
All right, and we got a Facebook comment that Jared and Angelo are going to do one of the clones.
Oh
so
man,
I'm looking forward to that one.
There's the
it might
winners.
be overly hopped. I'm just gonna guess.
And George posted a question here in the chat on Zoom asking require record keeping and standards for how their procedures. Our sign up thing does have some basic questionnaires, but we are going to try to maybe find some sort of way to beer log, brew log, find a common form to just kind of collect that data, so that way we can see how people might have deviated off of or not, wouldn't say deviated, just follow their methods along, so that way when we are tasting it, we can pick up where we might have picked up that flavor difference or outcome difference between them all.
That actually might be an interesting point. So, like, I know when I first joined the club, there was a handful of members. Lee comes to mind. That their method of brewing beer was very much by like feel and like almost like well, Lee is a chef, so almost very chef like, where they just kind of they run to the kitchen, they see what ingredients they got, they just start throwing handfuls of stuff into a pot, and at the end of the day, the dude makes some of the best beer that comes to a meeting, and cannot tell you what the starting gravity was, the final gravity was, the IBUs are, the carbonation level is, like all these craziness, and it's hilarious when these guys consistently make just beer that they can go to their kitchen or go to their garage or wherever they store their grain and their hops and their yeast, and just grab stuff and throw something into a pot and make it insanely drinkable.
Use the force, Luke.
Yeah. The great thing about like Lee and some of these other guys too is they were doing sour beers, which kind of leads to what we're going to talk about a little bit later. They were doing like sour fermentations and some other craziness that just they could never ever they never understood what was actually, well, I mean, I know they understood, but they could never articulate because they didn't have the sort of, as George asked, the like scientific data, like the individual like little notes of scorecard things to like put down. It was really a great way to like learn when you've only been brewing for 3 or 4 years. And this guy's just like, yeah, I just throw handfuls of shit into a pot and don't know what I'm doing. Don't know what I'm like, not keeping track of what's happening.
Yeah, my best sour beer was totally accidental. I was brewing at Logan's house and he had transferred a lacto beer to a barrel and didn't mop the floor. And somehow my saison picked some of that up and it was amazing. And I wish I could recreate it, but I don't even know what happened.
All right. Let's see. The last slide we had here we're going to cover real quick. As I mentioned, we need empty, clean bottles. We're trying to, the club is buying ingredients and stuff for this, but if you happen to already be sitting on a lot of emptied bottles, clean bottles, or you're going to drink some here in the next couple weeks and can get them in time to provide these brewers with bottles, collect them. Please delabel them and keep them mold free. Rinse them out. And we will collect those at the bottle exchange and get those to the folks that have signed up to brew. As we are asking each person to bring 36 bottles currently, that's 180 plus bottles we're going to need. So, yeah, keep track of your bottles, bring them in, and Lee, I'll turn it over to you here to get our seminar kicking off.
All right. Well, we have some very special guests tonight. I'm so excited about that. And the American Homebrewers Association worked this all out. I just filled out a little form because they offered to come to local club meetings, like virtually. And so I'm going to turn it over to Debbie now from Jester King Brewing and let her take it over, if that's all right, Debbie.
Yeah, that sounds great. So hopefully Jeff will be here in just a moment. So my name is Debbie Serta. I represent you as a member of the governing committee for the American Homebrewers Association. I am now ending near the end of my third consecutive term. So I'm actually terming out for right now. But I'm really excited that we were able to that most recently the AHA was able to call upon the governing committee members to ensure that we're continuing to provide benefits to our membership, that we're able to provide quality content and to meet the needs, especially this year with us having lost, not being able to come together physically for HomebrewCon. So we're really, really appreciate you taking advantage of engaging with the AHA to get speakers on. I think it's really wonderful what you're doing with your meetings. I did a presentation last month to a club, and it was basically about how to do, what kind of events to have, member engagement and such. And I really think that just the work that you put together, as far as your slides and everything, really shows this wonderful level of commitment to making your meetings, very informative and engaging, and still creating that community that we may feel a sense of loss when we're not able to sit together and raise a beer, which I've got my little Jester King background on. That's why you can't quite see, my beer I'm drinking. So yes, please keep in mind too, when that checklist first went out, it was very specific it was specific in that here's some of the content that we know that we have available. And a lot of people checked that off, but it was also great that that your group, can you tell them Texas, that y'all added in there, these other topics that you wanted to discuss. And so, being that I not only am with AHA and that I have homebrewed the past, I say homebrewed. I've homebrewed I started in like 89. So it's been quite some time. But I don't find, I do a lot of the admin stuff in homebrewing nowadays for the AHA, the Pink Boot Society and such, because it's a little hard to get motivated to want to do a 5-gallon at home when I could just go up to the brewery and help out on a 30-barrel system or go help package, which is kind of cool to do. So I've been with Jester King as staff for 6 years. I am currently the community engagement coordinator, which means I do all things web and social media, our tour program, basically whatever it is that our team needs. I've been involved with the brewery for over 10 years. I say that because I knew Jeffrey Steffings and his brother Michael through our local homebrew club, through the Austin Zealots. And so Jeff would bring his homebrew to the club and have us be able to taste through that. So with that, let me see. I'm talking about Jeff. Is he on yet? Lee, have we seen him come through?
I have not seen him on yet, but I am curious what you're drinking, Debbie.
So I am drinking, and here I'm going to turn off my off my background so that way I can show you my actual beer. I am drinking a beer that we won't be talking about tonight, and that is the Jester King Italian style Pilsner. And this is something that I'll go ahead and I'll talk about while waiting for Jeff to pop on. But one of the things that we were very fortuitously did this year, at the beginning of the year, or really I say that, usually around this time is when we're planning out our beer schedule for the next year. And so we fortuitously had started to look at what are people asking for, as far as what are the beers that people are drinking, what are the beers that we're drinking. And so we really enjoy drinking pilsners. I mean, don't get me wrong, Petite Prince is basically, that is a table beer for us. We drink more Petite Prince than we do water. But ultimately it was the, what is that we're what is it that we're meeting, are we being flexible, and are we providing a portfolio that allows us to provide beer that people will like. So I'm really excited the fact that what we're using with this is has the Ericlea malt, which is from Italy near the Adriatic Sea. We've got, though, for the yeast in this, the yeast that we use, I believe, and I'm going to watch, this is when Jeff will pop in right when I'm talking about it, I get it wrong. I believe that we used a lager yeast from a local source from Community Cultures Yeast Laboratories out of San Antonio. And so while we've kind of maybe pivoted a little bit to increase our portfolio, we still are holding true to the essence of wanting to create something that is reflective of our locality, or perhaps maybe it is about paying homage to a certain style or to a certain region that's inspired us. Obviously, the purpose of this talk today is to talk a bit about where we really got our start um, with Jester King, and that is being a farmhouse brewery, being inspired by both the Belgian and the French farmhouse breweries of Europe, and kind of looking at that when we were going through and developing our portfolio over the years. So let's see. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm glad to see I dropped that link in. So I'm not sure what's up with Jeff. I'm really sorry. He did confirm with me yesterday. I don't know if he's had a family emergency, but if y'all okay with me, I can talk through the presentation I put together, and if he joins us, and he can really get into more level of technical detail. But if that's okay with you, let's go ahead and go through these slides that we have here. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Jester King, we are a farmhouse brewery. And so, yeah, should we pull up how do we pull up the slide view? Does that help? Mhm. Oh, cool. So, mhm. Did I just do that? I did. I don't. oh, did I share screen? I didn't mean to.
I might have screwed that up. Hold on. I was just trying to bring it up as my full screen. I didn't realize I hit share screen for all.
Screen. So my name is Frank. I'm the sort of technology guy for the club. I'm broadcasting what Zoom call we're in to Facebook and YouTube simultaneously, and I have a separate computer that is the slides, which is another webcam looking at another monitor. And if you want to look at that user called slides, it'll show you what slide we're on in the slide deck. It looks like you guys have done great with a lot of pictures and not a lot of just reading text, which we love. So you can kind of keep track of where you're at, and if you want to tell me the next slide, I'll move it along. If you don't, I can kind of keep track of where you're at and kind of move it along for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. So we'll just start it here and just basically talk a bit about the history of Jester King. So this brewery just recently celebrated its 10th anniversary. We're a farmhouse brewery located in the hill country of Texas. We are very fortunate to essentially be on 165 acres of beautiful land. This was not an all of a sudden, okay, we're getting all this property. It was an evolution. 10 years ago, Michael and Jeff first rented at least part of the property to build the brewery, got started. Then a few years later, I want to say several years later, maybe 2015, purchased some more of the land. So got up to about 65, then got up to 120. And eventually, what's important about this is that as we were getting more of the land, it wasn't that we were getting it and then building on it or converting it. It was essentially just going and retaining that natural landscape around us. And then the final purchase 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, was to actually purchase the kitchen, the restaurant that was there, as well as an event hall and some more land. And so what this means now is that not only do we have our brewery and we have ownership of all this, but we're able to essentially have this opportunity. Someone called it Jester World today. We it was really exciting to find out today we were selected as the top brewery in Austin by the Austin Chronicle, which is a local weekly periodical that's very well respected here. And so it's funny because the author of it called us that. In a way, this is important for dialogue later when we talk about like what we did in 2020 to pivot. Um, and so, what's always been important at the core philosophy of Jester King is to create a sense of place. And that a sense of place is the idea that we want to create something, a beer that is tied to our locality, that represents time, place, and people. So, that is the time it takes to create the beer, perhaps where we are in our legacy. When we talk about the people, we're talking about our brewer, but we're also talking about things such as where are we getting the malt from? Is the malt coming from is it coming from Italy for an Italian style pilsner, or are we working with Texas farmers? We're working with a local maltster who's getting grain from Texas farmers, right? And it also can be for us. Obviously, it is about our our guests, our fans, the people who give us the feedback and say, this is really great. We love this. Do more of this. Or people who say, it'd be really awesome. Why'd you try Pilsner? Um, and so finally we talk about place. We are out, beautiful, inspirational. The land is amazing. You can't help it but be out there and just feel really calm. And the way that it starts for us is with our water. Unlike most modern brewing facilities, we are getting our water from a groundwater source there on site. This water is coming from the Lower Trinity Aquifer, which supplies much of this area, the hill country. It's very high. It's very rich in minerals and metals. Well, I'd say it's very rich in minerals. So it's got fairly high chloride and sulfate. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Frank ran off, but there's a dog that just walked in the room. It reminds me of that BBC commentator who's getting interviewed and his kids come into the room, right? I just saw a cute dog just walk into Frank's room, so I was distracted for a moment. Anyhow, but oh, he's so handsome. That just cracks me up though. It's so much like that you just friggin' memed. You just yeah, copy that. So talking about our water, we are using water coming from our own groundwater well that is over, oh gosh, I should know this because I've looked at the well logs before, but we're get about 800 feet below where we're at, which is considered to be fairly deep for that area. There's a lot of limestone and such. And so it's not the Edwards Aquifer everybody talks about, well, although very close to that. It's a slightly different aquifer that's there. So we draw that water up. We use it untreated throughout the process, as we tend to make our farmhouse ales. This is important as well because this has changed a bit. I can tell you, I did my last public tour back in March, and things have changed since March. So this is definitely a little unscripted to talk about. But then we'll get to when we talk more about the Italian Pilsner. So we use the water untreated. We use as much as we can. We try to use malt from the local maltster that's coming from farmers. So we may have grain coming from really nearby, Hutto, Texas, all the way up to the Panhandle. And then our system is a 30 barrel system, which actually we'll get to that in a second. But let's go ahead and go forward one slide as before I continue on to this. I just realized. So next slide. Oh yeah, Frank, could you advance the slide? Oh wait a minute, you probably did. I'm just looking at the wrong slides. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. You don't have. Okay, got it. Let's go back one. So I just want to. Yeah, I just. Cool. So I just want to show you real quick when we talk about terroir is there are some people would argue and say, no, there is no such thing about terroir in beer. And I would say, yeah, yes. Because when you're talking about creating, um, I mean, there's so much that it can be different. If we are trying to grow our own hops there, as you see those reclaimed telephone poles in this image, um, that those hops are not going to be the same as if they're grown in the Pacific Northwest. Um, if those varieties are. Now we are experimenting a little bit with Neo-Mexicana, which is indigenous to Southwestern quite a bit. What you got there? Oh, nice. And so, and then the idea that terroir, the fact that our water is that the beer we make, we want it to be reflective of our surroundings. We don't want to sit there and just strip it all down and then try to rebuild it to make a beer that is completely just not have that tie to us as well. So go ahead and go to the next slide then, Frank. So as I mentioned, we have a 30 barrel system. This is our brew house. So you can see in the very back of this, you see the kettle, the mash tun and the kettle on the right. We have a mill back behind it. This building actually, part of it was a reclaimed old mill from the early 1900s that the brothers brought out here and used for some of the walls. And then in the front, you see this is actually some bottles that have been filled and are ready to go into the conditioning room to have them go in there and let them sit for a while and have them let them go through that conditioning, that carbonation. Let's see, and let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we'll brew our beer, then we'll transfer it typically either into stainless steel fermenters that you see in there, or going into the next room here is our barrel room. And so we have a pretty large stock of barrels. Most of our barrels are European oak. When we talk about European oak and people say, oh, it's European oak, it's because they maybe don't want to admit that it's not all French oak. It might be Hungarian oak. But most of our barrels are second use white wine varietals. They are French oak. However, the reason why there's Hungarian oak in here as well is at one point there was a bit of a shortage, and the French winemakers started purchasing oak, or the tonneliers or such were getting oak from Hungary. And I'm sorry, yeah. And so it turned out that they really liked it a lot. They liked the porosity of it. They liked the character that it kind of imparted onto their beers, or and the wines. I mean, onto their wines. And so that's why sometimes you'll hear that, oh, it's Hungarian oak is more French than French, because the French kind of took to it so much that they helped and invested money into kind of reforestations in areas of Hungary, because they want to see this resource continue on. And so we work with a barrel broker out of Europe who, the hard part for us with this is often when we're buying some of these barrels, we're having to basically take a pretty sizable amount. So it's not like we're getting barrels in, every other week or even every month. It's usually maybe once a year. This year, unfortunately, due to the economic and health crisis, we had to table bringing any new barrels into our inventory. So that does mean that some of our staff do have to be pretty good at getting in there and knowing a little bit about cooperage in regards to ensuring that the barrels are serviced so that you don't wind up with any failures, physical failures, anything related to oxidation that could occur if a barrel were to be left in such a condition that it could dry out, and then you have an issue because you're going to have your staves kind of break apart. Um, so these are, because they're second use, after amount of time of barrels being used in winemaking, they outlive their usefulness. The wood literally becomes exhausted, where all of the compounds that they're wanting to pull out, that nice oak character, just goes away. And it can be after a few years or certain number of uses. It can vary, obviously. And so then that's when we are buying these barrels. We're getting them when they reach an oak neutral state. We bring them in, we steam, we'll rinse them out, we'll steam them. And then what we'll do to make our mixed fermentation beer is we will add in the wort along with our mixed culture. Now that's something I didn't talk about in regards to our mixed culture. The way that we have propagated our mixed culture is we essentially have taken a flask of wort, cool night, put it out, propagated it, let it kind of collect, kind of bioprospect and draw in some organisms and take that and then be able to use that to culture and to continue on. So the idea of that it's a combination of what we see is there are some saison yeast, there's some saison yeast that was used there as a base at one point, and then there's Brettanomyces and Lactobacillus are the two organisms that we are most striving for when you look at our Jester King beers, because it's very important for us to have balanced acidity in our beers. That is coming from, the organisms that we really want to have really happy are the Brett and the Lacto. We want to try to keep Pediococcus and Acetobacter at bay. We realize that because we are working with a mixed culture that we've bioprospected from our own environment, is that those organisms are still going to be there. But we just want them to be back off in the wings. We don't want them to kind of come up and steal the spotlight, right? And so the way that we are able to, and I don't really like to say control, because I feel that ultimately we want our ingredients to dictate what the beer should be, but we still want to help to create this kind of guide that journey and that evolution of the beer. So there are various factors. So there are things such as what the hopping ratios are, the IBUs, because of the biocidal nature of hops, pH, alkalinity. But most importantly for us, it is about temperature. So what you see in this barrel room is, and what you can't quite see here, but right above these barrels on both sides are temperature probes, and within there we actually do have cooling units, so that we try to keep the ambient temperature in this room around 65, 66 degrees year round. And so it's kind of interesting, though. We often do see that in our brew house where our fermenters are that are stainless steel, we do have jacketed glycol chilled units. We try to, we also work to keep those temperatures in that kind of same range. But we're in Texas. It gets over, 100 degrees in the summer, which means it's probably 120, 115 in the brew house. So what's interesting is to see some of the compounds that do seem to form in the fermentation of the stainless steel beers that are there, as opposed to the barrel room and the winter, right? So you do see this sort of variation between the production of esters and phenols across our portfolio, right? Because we will use the stainless steel fermenters are where we are producing beers such as Petite Prince, really nice, very clean. I say clean. It's not going to be all crazy, funky. Leave you with indigestion that you have to down some Tums. I mean, for me, I felt like drinking Petite Prince is, something that drinking Petite Prince is something I'm like, this is great. This is probiotics. Who needs kombucha? This is keeping me healthy, and I don't have that terrible like gastric, because again, going back to, we always strive for balanced acidity. you can't take our beers and I mean, I feel like you could take our beers and you can line them up across a broad spectrum because there may be other things that play within those beers that can impact the flavor. We don't want that burning sensation when you try the beers because I'm sure y'all can think of, one or two European breweries that not only do they produce really acetic or acidic beers, um, but it's funny. There was which brewery was it? Was it probably Mikkeller who made fun of the Americans by having that one that was basically about Americans want beers that rot your teeth out, and it's like that is so far from the type of beer that we want to make at Jester King. So, being able to keep the temperatures so that the beer can age. Our barrel aged beers typically take about, oh goodness, I would say 6 or 8 months. Men could be 18 months for some beers, depending on what just basically what our starting gravity is and what maybe anything else that might be in there. A little bit and when I say adjunct, I say anything else that might be added in. So what that could be, that could simply be something like wildflower honey. I say wildflower, yeah, because we have a couple beers that we've used honey that we've actually added in during the kettle. Um, let's go on to the next. So well, actually, let me tell you. Okay, so large percentage of the barrels, second use wine barrels. We do have gin and whiskey and mezcal barrels. It's not that we're wanting to and sherry barrels. It's not that we want to impart the alcohol of that onto the beers. But we know that those barrels have gone through different journeys, and so there will be something different that will happen. Now, unfortunately, cherry atrial rubicite did not see light of day this last time around. We unfortunately were not able to sell it. Thankfully, having a kitchen, we do have plenty of sherry atrial rubicite vinaigrette dressing. We were able to use that, but it went acidic. It didn't clean up, and that was pretty hard, difficult for us because that is definitely a major when you think about you're looking at your where your income comes from. Atrial rubicite is our most sought after beer. It does sell out very quickly. So having the sherry atrial version, would have been fabulous. But sherry likes oxidation. It likes oxygen, and unfortunately, beer does not. So, and what you don't see here, unfortunately, and I would love to have a photo to show you, is we do have a foeder. So one of the things to talk about with that is, you know what? We'll talk about it in a minute. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We'll talk about foeder. We'll talk about some other things I haven't ever. Let's go to the next one. And that is yes. Okay. So Jester King, when it first started, the intent was always to be a farmhouse brewery producing farmhouse ales and to make mixed fermentation beers. But my personal thought, and I really think that this is kind of the mindset of our ownership and our founders, is that you really just can't come right out the gate and 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 go from being a home brewer to a pro brewer on 30 barrel system and make sour ales out just out the gate. I think that it's important that you be able to show that you can build, that you can create good beer, that you've got the process down, that it's a really strong foundation, that you've got your sort of, here's what we got to do to build up the capital. Let's start out by selling uh, our black metal, our imperial stout, commercial suicide, which people thought it was named that because it was so low in ABV. Because 10 years ago, people are like, they're mad. You're selling a beer that's only 2.9% ABV. Nobody's gonna want to drink that. They want more booze for their buck or whatever. And it's not that it was an expensive beer. It's just that people weren't used to an English mild or English brown. And then the Witchmaker, which is a fabulous, fabulous rye IPA. I won a homebrew award with my clone of that in San Antonio at Cerveza Fest, so I was very happy with that. But then after a few years, that's when we were able to we did work a little bit with some culture that some of the earlier brewers did bring in some microbes from some of the, from probably like White Labs or Y Yeast or something. But we eventually got to where we established our own sort of house, our mixed fermentation culture. Um, and that's how we then thrive through and made our beers. Now, with that, the other thing that we wanted to do, and it took us a while to get to, was to create spontaneous fermentation beer. And that is the understanding that we wanted to be able to create beer that is an homage to people who inspired our founders and our brewers. And so that is thinking of Cantillon, of Jean Van Roy, of Rodenbach, of Fantôme, um, of Daniel Therese or Thierry, uh, of who is in oh gosh, I'm trying to remember where he's at. It's an Esquelbec. It's literally, you might as well be in Belgium. It's that close to the French Belgium border, right? And so those were the ones that really influenced us in this. And oh, and real quick, can I get a time check? How much time do I have?
You're doing
Oh, do good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so what we did is we first started a few years ago, and we had a smaller cool ship that we would. It was big and it was stainless steel, and put it out and had it in the barrel room, and would open up the doors. And what we do essentially would be to brew the beer on a cold night, on cold when you know it's gonna be cold, and let the microbes come in. And when we first started, it didn't go so hot, and there weren't a lot of batches, but learned from lessons learned, moved on. Eventually we were able to create um this 30 barrel cool ship that you see. It's made out of copper. It's actually upstairs in the second floor of our barrel room. And so our brewers will start, typically they'll mill the grain the night before, maybe, or typically they'll do it the night before, and they'll get started around about 6 a.m. Get started, so that this beer goes through. It's composed of malted and unmalted two-row barley, wheat. Um, it is a turbid mash. It is an extended boil, so we're going about 4 hours on the boil. We're using aged hops. Most of the hops that we have used in the past have been coming from our aged hops have come from. I'm sorry. Our hops have come from an organic hop house just south of Portland, Oregon. So Oregon, I think it's like the Oregon Hop House or something. But we take some of those hops, not just from them, but also from friends in the community who say, "Hey, we have some old hops. Y'all want these?" And they'll send them over. And so we put them into burlap sacks and put them up into the attic of a horse barn on our property. So they go from being fresh, maybe kind of fresh or bright, to being dank, earthy, barnyardy. So it's a way that we can take that ingredient that we can't source locally and still influence it with our surroundings, with our environs. Um, so we will use aged, they will use aged hops in the boil, um, and then transferred over. So this gets transferred over to the cool ship probably about, oh, usually around like 7 o'clock. So it's almost 12 hours from the moment that they kind of get ready. They start doing getting the grain into the mash tun and going to boil and get over here about. They'll start filling it up 6 or 7, and then we'll fill this. And if you notice, go ahead and go to the next slide. You can see closer. You can see that foam that just kind of tends to form and you get this image where they've built this kind of little gooseneck, so that as the wort is being pumped over and such, it's then being able to kind of uh, come in and just sort of aerate out a little bit. So then that way you are getting some organisms. Now, what's really important about this is we're definitely trying to do this when we know it's going to be it'll be, in the 40s, 30s or 40s at night, and then cool during the day. I used to joke and say, yeah, we get to do this maybe once or twice during a winter because Texas is typically quite a bit warm. But this last winter, we were really, we really had a lot of cold nights, and I think we did a fair amount of the spawn. And so there's windows you had seen in that previous photo that are kind of more decorative, but we can open. And there's also windows on the other side. So then that way the night air can come in. It'll come in, draw in organisms from there, as well as from the wood around it, even from like if you see right behind this, that puncheon, the barrel that has the, you can see the where the krausen, krausen gets pushed out, dries on top. We don't come through here and clean these barrels. We know that that was a healthy fermentation. We want to leave those organisms there. We won't come in here with any kind of bleach within this area. They're in regards to allowing this natural environment to occur. When this is done, it's usually it'll be the next morning that they'll go ahead and drain it out, run it through a intermediate tank, essentially, our mixing tank, so that they can we'll add in priming sugar, so that way it gives the organisms a little bit of a kind of a jump start on fermentation, and then pump it back into the puncheons that you see behind this cool ship. So the puncheons we have, I believe, are like 100 and 200 liters. The importance of this, about the size of the volume, and when you talk about barrels in general, which I didn't talk about earlier, is the smaller the barrel, the more surface area to volume ratio. You get more engagement of your organisms with your wort in a smaller vessel. However, when you have something you are, conditioning in this cask for quite some time, then despite thinking that the wood is fairly exhausted, you can still wind up with a bit too much of oak character. And so that was something I think that we went from 100 liters to 200 liters on the puncheons, because what we'll do is we'll pump the wort back, place it into the puncheons, and let it sit there and then ferment for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then take that and blend it back together to create our 3-year blend of spawn. So imagine if you had a beer and you had it in that barrel in the cask and you had it for 2 to 3 years, then it is possible, because when you think about wood, it's very porous, and your organisms, they'll get in there and they'll wind up kind of setting up a biofilm within on the wood, and those organisms can get down a couple millimeters into that wood, and then they'll kind of seed off and slough off. And so I will say, this is what's important, and we'll talk, that I could have spoken about earlier, but this is what's important when we look at blending our beers. So whether it's the mixed fermentation that are in the smaller barrels, because we do have the, traditional barrels that are 60 gallons, is that what our team will do is they'll come through and they'll just, they've got a penny nail, or Vinny nail as you would call it, and they'll take a taste and test and see how the beer is tasting. Wow, this has got really nice low acidity. Oh, this one's got some really great volatiles. And so that is what helps to guide them then when they take these and blend them. If they go and taste one of the barrels and it's got that funky cat pee, dirty diaper, whatever, well, they're like, oh, let's leave it. Let's let it clean up. Brett will eat everything, right? I say that on a tour, and people just go, oh, like, hey, it's something that can happen. And so that's something that we find is, definitely, I think it's great. I mean, Russian River, Vinny is the one who's credited with getting people away from using a thief in a, taking off your bung cap and all that, because yeah, you're increasing the surface area, the potential of contamination, as opposed to the idea of a penny nail and the pressure that's going to come out from it, so that you're going to be able to create a more, sanitary. And I say sanitary is that, you're handling, handling more things, and you're kind of got to where hopefully your organisms are doing well. There have been times in the past where maybe fermentation didn't occur. Why? Well, we think our hopping ratios were off. So they decreased the hopping ratio. They decreased the amount of hops being added. Now, one thing I've always questioned about that is, I always wondered though, if we're getting a hodgepodge of hops from various folks, and this is not something I've really gotten asked, Jeff or our brewers recently, but if we're getting a hodgepodge of hops from other breweries, if those have really high alpha acids to start, then they may not get as low as they need to be for you to be really using in this kind of fermentation, because it is quite possible that there is still that antimicrobial properties there. I've spoken to one of the guys who does the YCH lambic program, where he definitely has tried to work with some of the lambic and goose producers by getting input from them as far as what they're using. But I think that what YCH has had is you definitely want to be at like 7 or well below. So what I mean by that is if you're taking something that has a starting out at 20 or whatever really high, is it ever going to decompose enough to get below that threshold, right? So let's go to the next slide. Because we'll still have, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great question. The thing about copper is that you're going to get better heat transfer out. So you're going to be able to have your work cool down a bit quicker. Stainless steel retains heat, so the risk of stainless steel is that you've got a couple things at play. You kind of want to have your cool down to be such that you're able to get it in certain organisms. But my understanding is that two things is that there is some DMS formation that can occur if those temps are staying higher and for a duration. That's a potential with stainless steel. Also, there are certain strains of pediococcus that, yes, they're not really like it's weird to say they're slow movers, but I do think that the more extended that cool down is, can open yourself up a bit more to pediococcus. Is some of the understanding I have. Also, the reason why people are like, well, why did people make why copper coal ships? Well, think about it. I mean, I'm sure someone here smarter than me can tell me. Wasn't stainless steel basically something that was, created in 1900s for World War during production during World War or something? Copper is cheap. Copper was easy to get hold of. So, I mean, the first coal ships, they were coal ships that were wood, made out of wood as well. But no, copper's very good. It's inexpensive. The other thing I'm kind of curious about though is the size of the coal ship, because keep in mind this coal ship, when we put the wort in, it's cooling. It will it's actually fairly deep. I would say it's probably about it probably is a good 10 inches. I've been to Zeugel breweries in Germany that they have cool ships, because having a cool ship doesn't mean you're making just spontaneous beer. There are pure culture brewers that have cool ships, very specifically Vindischbach Newhouse. They have they have a cool ship that's probably 4 times the size of our cool ship, but their kettle's smaller, meaning that they're able to get really a much more rapid cool down, and then they're pitching pure culture yeast, and it's pitched in so high that it's out competing all of the native yeast that might have gotten into that cool ship overnight. And that's definitely something. If you ever want to hear me talk about Zeugel brew houses, the Zeugel Stubes of Germany, I can definitely tell you a lot about that. But so yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, copper, like I said, I can go on about that. There's also some thought about people see our cool ship and they go, "Are you sure that's safe?" Because it's like, well, the amount of time that it's in contact and such, there's not enough copper that's going to oxidize that, or that's going to be imparted into it to be bad for us. Also, yeast need copper just like we need copper in our diets, right? So the idea of in moderation is good. So anybody else have a question right now? Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So now that we've talked a bit about mixed fermentation and spontaneous fermentation, Ls, I wanted to sort of talk about the role of fruit or the fruit variants that you can do. So what you see in this image here is you see at the top left are uh, Fendao. Fendao is um, it's one of our basically our fruited sour ales where we will take a beer, we will make our Das Überkin that we will um, it's a beer that we will first start in stainless steel and then move it into our foeder. And then we will take a portion of that food of it out of the foeder and place it into stainless steel totes with with fresh processed fruit. And when I say processed fruit, the fruit processing happens on site. We take care of that. Um, and so that foeder acts as a solera, so it never goes dry. We pull out a certain amount, we put more in, and so it just continues. So it is a Veuve saison that Das Überkin is. It serves as our barrel stock. We call Das Überkin our Veuve saison. Um, we very rarely sell bottles of it because we're using it as our base stock. And then we'll place it into the stainless steel totes with fresh fruit that we processed. This is a beer that we almost didn't make one year simply because the peach crops coming in just didn't meet our standards. These people are often like, when are you going to have this or when's it going to be ready? It's like, well, the beer lets us know when it's going to be ready. We have a general idea. But we did have one year we weren't going to make Fendal because we used Fredericksburg peaches, very well known here in Texas. And we had to say, yeah, these just don't meet quality. But towards the end of the growing season, or actually the harvest season, we found type, a different variety of peaches from I think Brownwood, Texas. They were different. They were wonderful. We made the beer, but the beer didn't, it wasn't exactly like the beer before because we were using a different source. And that's what's one of the beauties of us being able to really try to let the ingredients dictate what the beer should be, rather than let the ingredients decide what the beer should be and not us dictate what it has to be. But we are still trying to gently guide it through, how we're, what we're doing as far as processing the fruit. So we use organic, local fruit as much as we can. Atorubicite, those raspberries, it's incredible how many pounds we use per gallon this year. So what we'll do though is then also do, as you see on the bottom left, is our demitone. And what's interesting about this is that this is different. This is where what we will do is we will take the spent fruit out of those totes and then we'll place it into stainless steel vessel with more beer to produce basically the fruit will have multiple it will go through more than one stage. It will be that we'll use that fruit again, and so this demitone is the second stage I'm drawing a blank on our blueberry fruited sour. And then finally, we're doing a third in the lineage is the co-firm that you see the top right, where we did take, I think that's a co-firm with peaches. So that's peaches that came from the Fendal that was made this year. And we do a co-fermentation. So with that. And that's us kind of trying to see what it would be like to take the fruit and have it in at the same time the wort's fermenting, because our goal with this is to get our process refined that then we can easily, hopefully in the next year or so, start producing wine because we have vineyards. We've been growing grapes there. We also do source wine grapes from a local vineyard, which you'll see in the bottom right. Some of the spawn we will take and we will re-ferment it with uh, this is with Petit Verdot wine grapes and plum, so Texas plums and Petit Verdot. We firmly believe in never using pasteurized, just totally fruit that's been devoid of all the complexities or artificial flavor or fruit flavoring, because it's like making a beer cooler. We want to be able to allow the fruit to impart, the sugars and proteins, the complexities, that the microbes, when we call it a re-fermentation, because you kind of get that fermentation process going again, as the organisms that are there are acting upon the fruit. We'll go and do a punch down twice a day into the totes to do that. Um, the As I said, fruit processing is basically we'll get fresh fruit in from the farms or from the vineyards. We'll sit there and have to cut up a lot of fruit, or we've even taken limes and lemons and sliced them up and put them into dehydrator and dried them. We took lemons and put them over a grate over a fire pit and kind of did a little roasting of those as well. So, anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah,
You got
we have John in
Yeah.
the call with us today, and I know John was telling us before the meeting started that he recently made, correct me if I'm wrong, John, a 15-gallon batch of a sort of a beer must hybrid fermentation, and he was curious as to how you sort of determine how you match specific musts, fruit musts, to beer worts to ferment for like specific yeasts, or finding the perfect yeast for that combination.
Well, with that, we are currently still using our. Let me check on that 1 second. That's it. You just stumped me. The co-firms are very new for us. Um, so actually, what we're doing right now is we're still doing it with our farmhouse L. So this is still our mixed culture, and we're doing this so that we're co-fermenting it with the fruit. So the idea is that let me just double check this. Yeah. So in the past, as I said, we'll take a saison, goes through stainless, goes in the foeder, then it comes out, and the beer's kind of done. It can be done, but then we'll take a minute in fruit, and that goes on. For our peach co-firm, what we did is we did it where we just pitched our we first we got our peaches, we pureed them, we put them in stainless steel fermenter, then we pitched our mixed culture, let the peaches ferment for a few days. Then we added fresh wort to the mix and let the co-fermentation just ferment out to total dryness. Once that's done, we then racked the peach wine kind of beer hybrid to our bottling tank, added priming sugar, and then we packaged it. So that way it went through 100% naturally re-fermentation, no filtration, pasteurization, addition, anything like that. I don't know. I would have to actually. I have some place where I could go and look and find, what the starting gravity and final gravity was on that, but it finished out at 4.1% alcohol. Um, Something I was going to bring up here. Oh, so this was while we were always wanting to make wine. I mean, well, I say not always, but we have been wanting to do that. This is something that we think about what America Solera is doing. So American Solera was a huge, huge influence on us doing this. As far as how to match specific musts with specific worts, I definitely think that we've seen the saison for us has been very. The saison has been very cooperative for us. Um, we aren't currently at this time trying to use different yeasts when it comes to beyond our mixed fermentation or for our clean line. So I said clean line for our pure culture. In the beginning of this year, it was decided we'd go pure culture. Even then, we're still using. Even then, we're still trying to do what we can to get yeast that is a bit more reflective of Texas, right? So let me. I don't know if anybody looked this up, but I will find this for you. We've used yeast from Big Bend of Texas, which is wonderful. I mean, I love that place, and the idea that we could be using native yeast, um, be able to use a native yeast from other areas in Texas, to me is just phenomenal. You know, see, I'm gonna drop this in here so you can see. They have been doing some. They have been doing some homebrew sizes for this that they sell to the San Antonio and San Antonio Homebrew Supply. I'm not sure who else they're working with, but we've made a couple. What did we make? We made something that was like an oat saison that was made with one of the Big Ben native yeast. So But I can definitely follow up with you, as well as if you want to email me your question, and I can always run it by our team a little, because it is such a new thing to be doing this beer wine hybrid. So
I think it to sort of paraphrase, I think it
yeah,
sounds like the brewery in general, like Jester King in general, kind of found a beer recipe and a wild yeast strain that matched a lot of fruit. And when you get high quality fruit with an existing sort of quality product that um, it's not hard to kind of throw those things together and make what could be a reasonably high quality product as a sum.
hmm
And in some cases, I'm going to use the word that people hate, sort of a synergy. Um, but like, if I think it starts with the quality aspect of what you guys seem to have been doing with blending sort of a high quality product to begin with, and then sourcing the very high quality ingredients to make sure that what you're what in and what is coming in reflects what you want to come out. Um,
yeah,
and it takes a lot of the guesswork about how do we find the right must and the right yeast and the right whatever, when we've already found those bits and bobs to begin with, and we just put them together at the end and they come out with a new product that we enjoy.
yes, definitely. I think the challenge we've had in our brewing process, or I should say in our portfolio more, has not really been I don't think the only time in general, I think we do very well with fruit. I do feel that every once in a while there are things we have issues with, and it may have to do with the type of vegetal matter or pectin. So that we've seen, with Fearless Traveler, which had prickly pear uh, tunas in them. I think in that one we wound up with some pediococcus occurring. Phantom Del Rey, which had truffle honey, and so I do sometimes think that there are a couple things that you may add, and you might have something that turns winds up being a bit of that it just doesn't work quite the well. But I think we really got a firm grasp on when we look at the stone fruit, when we look at the wine grapes, and then as I said, it's been really it's been really good with what we've been doing as far as working with the community culture yeast lab. um, our IPAs, we started doing IPAs this year. They've gone back and forth a little bit, and when I say that is, I do feel that we're well known for making dry, crisp beers. So, going toward the sort of maltier, uh, kind of maltier side, and the more sort of big boy hazies can be a tricky kind of line. But we do have, like, I really love a couple we've done of our DDH IPA with Citra and Euconaut. There's a couple of sort of um, IPAs that we've done that I felt that we've had some good approaches as far as what the hop profiles are. Keeping in mind though, we have had to do a little bit of adjustment. We do water that's been softened uh, when we make our IPAs, because that is that one. But we still are using, as much as we can, we're using Texas grains with that. So let's see. Anyone else have a question? My last slide is basically, if you go to last slide, it's simply just do you have questions? Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. If Instagram, yes, that really, I mean, they're all, you know, Instagram is where it's a lot easier for me to engage or interact or whatever. Twitter, not so much, but I do help with all this. But yeah, I will say, I think that we're about to we will have our spawn. I'll tell y'all. Okay, this is. Well, I know it's also on YouTube. Spawn Week is going to be coming up when we'll be releasing our annual Spawn blend. So the 2020 Spawn blend will be essentially the most recent one, and that'll include some fruit variants. There could be things from our cellar, for all we know. I'm hoping, I'm working on that we'll be able to maybe do a virtual seminar that to be able to get some of our uh, team on. So I'll be sure to let y'all know if that does come to fruition, that we'll have that virtual seminar that week. But it'll be sometime most likely in early December. So, but yeah, Other questions?
A less technical question, but speaking of releases and stuff, are you predominantly only out of the brewery, or do you guys get to some Texas distribution, or where all can Jester King be found other than trade sites for severe markup? No, I'm just kidding. But
Yeah, I
you know,
know. I know.
where all abouts can you be located if when we do get back to traveling and a resumption of more normal
Yeah.
activity? Where do I
Yeah.
come across Jester King?
We would love to see you guys. And so if you go to the website under brewery, it says where to buy in Texas. Unfortunately, where to buy in Texas, beer shipping, which is not us because it's not legal in Texas for breweries to ship direct. We do work with Tavor, and Tavor is, I'm pretty sure Tavor gets our product out to quite a few states in the US. We don't send everything out. We don't typically send the spawn and such. But the great thing about when we do, we do from time to time send some of our limited stuff to some of the small independent beer shops. I would definitely encourage you, though, if you do have opportunity to travel in the future. If you go to our page, you'll also see lodging. And so one of the things that we did about a year and a half ago is we acquired the inn that was next door. So it's basically a 5-unit inn that will be having camping there as well soon. And it's a wonderful little place. It's great because it's a way you can come in and you have your own place. You can walk over the brewery. And the beauty of it is, yeah, we were closed for a bit of time. We closed probably, oh gosh, like March, I think March 15th was our last day to be, open before everything really hit. And we were closed for a little bit. And then when we reopened doing curbside, online order, curbside pickup only. Then at some point when they're allowing, kind of restaurants, we were able to pivot for that because we do in the kitchen. Did a lot of work on. It's definitely now known as Jester King Kitchen. We have the same philosophy for the ingredients that we use. So our pizza dough, our bread, we are using flour from a local miller that it's grain from Texas farmers. It's not, overly processed. Um, we also use some of our culture as the starter for the pizza dough as well. Um, and so if you, do get a chance at some point, whenever it's find, better to be able to travel, we do have that lodging right next door, which is a great little place to stay. I just was there on Monday night because we had a small kind of Friendsgiving 10th anniversary party just for staff. So we were all outdoors. There's a nice kind of outdoors pavilion. There's fire pits and everything. So, but yeah, no, this is, I was really glad to be able to, because Jay was on. I saw Jay Brunkers here. So I know a few people up in y'all's area. So it's great to be able to do this for y'all.
We had one last question I see
Yeah,
here in the chat. Otherwise, I'm hunting just to see if anybody else had any that I'd missed.
Yeah, sure.
But one question from John there was just, have you guys done any experimentation? We were talking about cultures and yeast and stuff. Have you guys tried anything with like the Japanese koji or any of those type of, more atypical strains? Because that's more constrained to sake making. But I know there's been some crossover in beer.
Well, I can speak to the fact that we have used Vike, if that's how you would pronounce it, Vike, that we've used Voss, and I'm not sure if we used Hornendal. I think, let me check. You said Koji. There just might be some Koji coming down sometime. Like maybe a Koji rice lager. I don't know. Shh. Delete that out of the video. No. Yeah. No, I think so. Let me look at this real quick. Yeah, it's very likely. I think that we're looking at doing something like that. We've talked about it a little openly too. So I would definitely keep your ears open probably in the next month or so.
Okay. Thanks,
So,
Fran.
yeah, and so the great thing is I'll be sure that when that does happen, that I'll make a note and I'll send Lee. Lee, what do I owe you now? Oh, information on the Spawn virtual seminar when that gets scheduled, and then also if when we do a Koji release, I'll send you the blog post so that way you can check that out. And the great thing is, if y'all want to talk about something else, feel free to shoot John Moorhead, a email for topics, but and he'll get the scheduling going. But if there's some kind of topic that you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can see what I can arrange. So, and again, I apologize. I'm not really sure what's up with Jeff. I think he might have had a little bit of I think that he just might have had some kind of late family commitment come up due to his wife does work in a pharmacy at a major hospital here. So she's been really, really busy. So,
Well,
yeah.
we appreciate having you, though. I mean, you've been excellent. So thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to help. Any last final questions? Any parting? Yeah. So in the interest of time, I will say that I don't have any general tips for maintaining house culture over time, other than a big thing definitely is going to be that temperature. But I would highly recommend going, if you are already involved in this or seen it, go to the Milk the Funk wiki. Also, Jeff from Bootleg Biology also, I believe, has talked about that. In fact, there's probably an AHA presentation from the past that is about how to maintain your house culture. But I really think that anything you would ever want to know about house cultures and about how maintaining house cultures will be at Milk the Funk, which I will drop right here for you.
I've used Milk the Funk religiously when it comes to sour cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
yogurt starters and that kind of thing.
It's just amazing to see how often Milk the Funk gets how much Milk the Funk gets cited, and that pro brewers make references to it as well. And that they've really, I mean, Jeff at Jester King, Randa Jones at Yazoo Brewing, and of Embrace the Funk. I mean, they definitely credit Milk the Funk with being a great resource. Which actually, that's what helped us when we were looking at Antone Del Rey, which was the first beer that we had pediococcus occur, to the point that there was ropiness going on, and that in consultation with like the Milk the Funk community and looking at the wiki, the recommendation was give it 6 weeks, 9 weeks, let it clean up, see if it cleans up. And we had already been selling it, and so we said, if you want to exchange it, you can do that. If you want to just sit on it, that's we can reassess in a while. And sure enough, it cleaned up, and I was just amazed. I had a bottle of it, and I didn't open it until well after that. And it was interesting to see how subdued it was, because at first it was like, yeah, the lemon pepper and the truffle honey was just a little over the top for me when it first was released. Then I drank it like 6 months later, or actually maybe 8 months later. I took it to HomebrewCon and shared it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because the beers are going to continue to evolve. They're not pasteurized. So you're going to have the organisms continue to just go in there and do their thing. So, but, well, cool. Well, thank you everyone for your time. I do appreciate it. Lee's got my contact information if you have any questions. So I'm going to drop off so I can go have a little late dinner here for me. But yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and presenting. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
That was great, Debbie. Thank you so much. And I'm again going to reiterate that the American Homebrewers Association made this possible. So if you are not a member of the American Homebrewers Association, I would highly recommend getting a membership. They have all sorts of, she referenced seminars that you can find on the AHA page. Like anytime I do a seminar for the LBG, one of the first things I do is just like search the seminars that they have and watch all those, and then make my presentation based off of what I learned from reading books for our wonderful library and things I find on the AHA seminars. So highly recommend joining the American Homebrewers Association.
I will
thank you so much, Debbie.
Yeah, and I'll send you a discount code too. That would have been if we had used the slide templates that they send out. It had a code. So for being here today, I'll definitely get that code out to y'all for a discount for membership.
Cool.
Awesome.
Don't forget
Awesome.
to mark Lawrence Brewers Guild as your home club in your AHA membership resident or renewalship. We actually maybe Jake, if he's still around, can speak to. We get insurance from the AHA, and that was something the AHA implemented 3 or 4 years ago. So the more paid members we have, the better our insurance premium is through the AHA. So that helps cover sort of things that involved in having the meetings and having things go on. So if you mark Lawrence Brewers Guild as your membership course, it'll help us out.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Y'all have a great night. Take care.
You.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right, Frank, you want to smash that next slide? I forget what's next. The
It's
tasting.
tasting, yeah. So everybody grab a oatmeal stout from the local brewery. Get a slide on screen. People can't see the slide right now, and I've got to transition. It's been a long meeting. There we go. If you're watching at home on the interwebs, we are on to the last beer of our tasting tonight.
And don't forget after the tasting too, if you want to stick and play around, we are going to do one last AHA Slides survey. Her presentation, I didn't have enough media to like do necessarily hard questions about, so this is more just general brewing survey type stuff like we've usually wrapped up with. Less hard questions or anything, quiz questions. There won't be a leaderboard. I won't be able to botch that. All right. So, let's see. This is the Free State Oatmeal Stout we're working on now. We wanted to mix it up. We wanted to have the IPA for our big collab brew, but we also wanted to pick something that was local, something that wasn't necessarily another round of hop abuse for those who might not be IPA fans. So you can see here, this is a little lower IBUs at 42. It is a category 16B oatmeal stout for the BJCP category. And if you notice here, the artwork has changed. Unfortunately, I couldn't find online a cute picture of, like where they do the 6-pack plus the bottle or a 6-pack and a pint of the new artwork. So there's the old artwork and then a large logo design of what you see on the shelf now. If you notice, it's now the dog. Yep. See, Lee's got a bottle there, and that's what I've got too.
He's so cute. Look at that.
All right. And did we have a second slide on this, Frank, that has the same questions we ran over earlier? Yeah. So we just poured. Well, a lot of us just poured it in our glass. If you haven't yet, go ahead and pour it in your glass. Let's observe, smell, and then taste. When you smell the beer, what are you getting out of there? Those of us in the Zoom call, you're welcome to chime in what kind of scents you're getting, aromas you're getting, what you're perceiving with your nose. Otherwise, you can add it in the chat if you're on YouTube.
I'm definitely getting like sweet roasty malt is the dominant aroma I'm picking up. Seems like a really clean fermentation. I'm not getting any sort of like esters, DMS, diacetyl sort of characteristics.
I think I could pick up maybe some like faint chocolate. A little bit of coffee, but you'll get those with a lot of your roasted malts like that. But
no, I definitely agree with that. It smells like stout deliciousness. I'm very excited for this one. The BJCP 16B. So I'm gonna real fast hit some of that. So we kind of skipped our color there. This one's much more of I'll call it probably black. It's beyond the browns at this point. So that's definitely the oatmeal stout. They characterize as medium brown to black in color. We've definitely got a moderately persistent head. I feel like the Bell's is probably evenly persistent in my pour. Maybe other people can see different, but This is about as persistent a head, but it's much darker head. The other one was maybe a white off-white. This, you definitely have a brown tone to the head.
Yeah, this is more of a tan head, and like the clarity wise, it's opaque. Like it's black. You can't see anything through
No, I can't see my webcam through the beer.
it.
Nor can.
And I poured I poured in one of the fancy like crystal glasses, and the heads distribute or dispersed fairly quickly, which is, as a super smooth glass, tends to lead to a less persistent head.
Oh. But yeah,
I don't think it's much different in my pint glass.
So with the aroma, then we gave some of those chocolate notes, a little bit of maltiness. I think somebody said the diacetyl word, and that was, I forget.
I said it. I said it wasn't present.
Okay, and that's definitely to style.
Yeah.
This is definitely malts are the showboat here. You're not getting really any sort of hop aromas or anything like that. It's the malt is the show in this beer, and that's typical for the style.
I feel like a lot of our perceptions on aroma carry through in the flavor, as far as like roasty malt, some chocolatey sweetness. I maybe get a little like earthy hop, but it's like if I search for it, it's there. The malts certainly dominate.
Yeah. That's definitely as far as hop versus malt balance, it's very much the malt is the game.
So what do you all think about like the balance and the finish of this beer? Because I get some hold on, I'm reading my score sheet. Like I get the malty sweetness, but there's a little bit of bitterness there that I think might even be more like malt astringency based than hop bitterness. Like I feel like it still has that balance. And in the aftertaste, it's not like a sweet aftertaste. It's I think it leans more bitter, astringent, but like roasty.
Well,
Not I throw out those words, but not in a heavy way.
you talk
I
about malt.
would say even worse than that. I would say that the aftertaste is almost a burnt aftertaste.
Yeah.
When we talk about malt astringency, isn't that amplified by, say, if you put your dark malts in through the whole mash versus, say, if you're home brewing, adding them in the last 15, 20, more of a steep, doing them like you would an extract type situation?
Yes. I think that was part of one of our recent seminars.
I was listening.
Listening. So maybe the thing I would ask is if the sort of mouthfeel is there for an oatmeal stout, like if the heavy creaminess. I don't know where like oatmeal stout heavy creaminess and milk stout heavy creaminess kind of. I guess milk stout tends more towards the sweet side than oatmeal stout does, but like there's a definite like mouthfeel with that you expect with oatmeal stout, because when you hear oatmeal, you think of this thick porridge sort of breakfast dish that is very heavy on the tongue.
And on that note, just as far as, the scale, I would definitely say this is the lighter side of that body, that mouthfeel. I went thin is definitely not the word, but it's definitely like a lighter, creamier.
It's full bodied, but for the, what we're experiencing now in the stout realm.
Yeah. When Frank talks about like the thickness of like oatmeal and stuff like that, it's definitely, runs thinner there.
Yeah, I think it's missing a little bit of that creamy, full-bodied thing that you would normally get from, most oatmeal stouts, in my opinion.
But it's definitely a tasty one. I've enjoyed. I was telling him in the happy hour call, I bought a couple Free State samplers of recent. That's been my new trend, is back to samplers again. So I've enjoyed the few oatmeal stouts I got in here. I've been meaning to pick up a 6-pack or two specifically of that.
Okay, I want to argue with Josh.
All right, let's do it.
Because I feel like this is okay, it's full bodied. It's not like a barley wine syrupy heavy body or anything, but I feel like this is a full bodied beer. And what was the other thing you said for the mouthfeel? Creaminess. I think this is pretty creamy. I mean, certainly there are examples that are more creamy, but I wouldn't discount the creaminess in this beer.
Well, that's like
Opinions.
your opinion, man.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
Oscar quote for you there.
And that just highlights, though, even if you go to, say, a contest and you enter the same beer, that's why we have multiple people judge it. You talk about it, you collaborate on it, and you can enter the same beer at 3 different competitions where they don't talk and, like, so this pair of judges talks, but the next competition doesn't know what the last one said. You will get slightly different outcomes just based on the experiences and like calibration of someone's palate when they are judging it, and or what they've been forced to drink all night. If this is their 4th beer, when they get to yours, it's going to be a different situation than if it's your first beer and you're getting to dive right in fresh.
Well, and it also depends on what you're comparing it to. I'm drinking this beer, and if I'm comparing it to Kolsch or a lager, oh heck yes, this is a big-bodied beer. But when I compare it to other oatmeal stouts, it's not that big. And the same thing with the creaminess is, yeah, it goes down smooth. It's nice. It's pleasant. But, there are oatmeal stouts out there that go down like silk. And it's just like, well, where are you comparing to?
And I mean, I also think that temperature has a huge effect. I mean, maybe not so much on the mouthfeel or whatever, but overall, I just pulled this out of the fridge, so it is very cold. And I actually tend to like my stouts a little warmer. Um, so that could definitely be playing an effect on that.
Lee's working on warming that up fast. Oh, Frank says his has been calibrating, getting warmer for about 30 minutes now, so he's getting closer. I meant to get mine out sooner. I had my bells out for about 10 minutes before we did that one.
I think you made excellent points, John, about comparison. And also, Josh, I'm going to send someone to pee on your rug.
Nice.
All
It
right.
really ties the room together.
Really ties the room.
Of all the meetings to make Lebowski references, Dale has missed this meeting. And Dale is the ultimate dude of Lawrence, Kansas, and absolutely adores that movie. So we'll have to send him a link to watch the video again, because I think this is maybe a shining moment for him.
Yeah. Do we have any more comments on the beer tasting itself, or did we want to quick try to do our AHA slides quiz just while we've got everybody before we start losing people?
Yeah, we're 2 hours in, and we've lost 16 viewers, 7 viewers in the past 15 minutes.
So, all right. Well, we're going to pop up the slides. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure I don't break too much stuff with it. Frank, do you have that code from the slide you can drop in the chats while I'm going full screen and sharing?
I will do my best.
All right. That's all we can ask, Frank. All right. I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to share, but not my
Frank,
computer.
you're awesome. Thanks for all of your work on the technology end.
For those of you listening, and maybe couldn't get through a lot of the meeting, I hope to download this meeting especially and pull out the part where our guest speaker spoke and set that up as a separate YouTube video. So, if you missed some or part of or all of the meeting or of the guest speaker, I should hope to post that within a few days to our YouTube channel.
All right, so I've not done this without the quiz on the front, and I feel like it's missing the join thing, but it looks like some people got in, so never mind. Go ahead and join in here. The code is up top there. I think I figured it out this time. See, I still struggled.
It's always a struggle.
It's always a struggle. But the code's at the top of the screen. The code's also, I think, been posted into the chat. You can click that link straight in, make yourself a account. I'm working on getting it in on my phone myself so I can play along. All right, so the first question is apparently live to anybody watching. You can choose multiple options because I know there's a few people who dabble in multiple clubs just to see how we're represented tonight. And I did see some guest visitors, so appreciate having you tonight. I will wait just a minute longer. We've got 8 in right now, and I'll start revealing that slide here in just a second as I answered it, and it's holding me off from answering more until we click through. So we'll give it just a minute longer. Frank, since I can't see the comments, if anybody said anything,
I'm not seeing
can't-
anything so far.
okay.
So links have been posted in both YouTube and Facebook. Yeah, I do see. I think we have Jamie and Jamie's. You're a KCBM. You can shake your head.
Yeah.
I can see you in chat. Yeah, so I know we have Jamie from KCBM. And I don't feel bad calling her out because I think Lee's already called her out as one of her sort of mentors in becoming a BJCP judge, especially as a fellow
Totally.
woman.
Yes, Jamie's
seen-
awesome.
I've seen Stephanie with us for quite a bit.
Ditto. I did many amazing beer tastings at Stephanie's house to get me prepared for the BJCP exam.
Hey, Frank, just for the record, I'm also an LBG member.
Yeah, we claimed her earlier when we were talking about awards for Brew Bash.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I mean I saw Brew Bash and a lot of it was M&T Brewing Company.
No, she did claim her home club as KCBM, so they got the
Yeah.
points. But we'll still wrangle her in under our
Still
banner.
pull it.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and click through the next one just because I've seen the count get as high as 10, and then it's back down to 9. So I think we hit our peak. So it looks like there we go. We got our couple beer meisters we knew. I think Jay already popped out. Otherwise, I did
Yeah.
see a Topeka Hall of Famer.
I mean George was with us. I think he's still with us listening.
Yeah, George is on right now.
So he's kind of a dual member. George has been a typically a Hall of Famers member as well as a LBG member.
So here, I'll go ahead and keep clicking through our next questions.
Don't even tell me that. George is an LBG member, okay?
The next question, Jost, is have you brewed since March? I've been doing this every month just out of curiosity, see as it trends up. Are people finally getting like man, I need to brew more, or is it?
I got to update that one since I brewed on Learn to Brew Day. That was the first time I brewed since May.
Woohoo-lee! All right. Looks like we've got all 10 responses. Hey, that works. Cool. What's your next upcoming brew? You can type a open-ended response here.
I couldn't find my mute key here, so I'll just throw in my comment about the Hall of Famers. I haven't been a member over there for many years. I couldn't handle it. I'll just say that.
Well, we're glad to have you.
It is
love
great
you,
to hear from
George.
you, George.
Yeah.
I washed myself with your soap this morning, George.
I haven't lived in Topeka for a long time. I mean, like, I don't know, 8, 10 years or something.
Looks like for some upcoming brews, we've got English barley wine. We've got a couple of folks talk about the Bell's Clone. I see 2 Dunkels out there, light lager. 2 of us said something seasonal type dark. We said something for the holidays, something dark, and then
Ryan,
I see.
what's my next brew? Sounds like Ryan needs to make somebody's brew day up.
I'm guessing that's Brian out there, since he's a guest brewer on my equipment most of the time. Him and Nikki both. I'll shout out that both.
That was Nikki's question, actually, but yes.
Okay, yeah, they both are guest brew on out over here. All right. Oh, something hoppy to distill. I know who that was.
It's not exactly legal. I meant to ask our guest. So she mentioned mezcal in her using mezcal barrels in her talk about how she got what barrels they were using, and so we've learned that both from home use and from commercial use that a distilled pale ale tends to taste like tequila or mezcal.
Interesting.
If you add a little smoked malt to your pale ale, you can make a mezcal if you distill it. Which is fundamentally the difference between tequila and mezcal. Is mezcal is a little bit more smoky, and it's not exactly 100% blue agave syrup the way that tequila is.
And I believe there's a what yeah, it's Mezcal place, or there's a distilled spirits place down in Crossroads behind what you call it, Double Shift, that has that. And I can't bring up my thing to look up Google Maps.
What's the next question?
Something
Next question.
Mule.
Moving on.
Yeah, next question. Did you procure the beers for tonight's tasting? So I know previously in meetings we asked people what would make meetings better, and people said tasting. So we went ahead and tried this thing. So I threw a couple questions to see how much participation we got, and then I threw that didn't know just to make sure that we might be able to communicate it better in the future. Clearly, if all of a sudden we had everybody didn't know, then I really bombed it. But we'll definitely make sure to get it out earlier than week before. So that'll be an improvement for next time. But glad to see there's at least a handful of us that tried the tasting. I've got now a bunch of Bells Two Hearted left over, so that'll be fun. All right, next slide is, like I just mentioned, we talked about improvement. What ideas do you have to make virtual meetings better? What additional, we've tried to add some engagement here at these quizzes. We're adding the tasting. What kind of other ideas do you have that we can make it more interesting, since we're kind of, I wouldn't say stuck. We're kind of we're definitely going to be using this format for the near future for a few more meetings here. So what can we keep doing, especially as a new officer class takes over? What can we do to make it more engaging, more fun, and be exciting for all of us? Look forward to every month. Chugging beer or pet pictures? We could have a pet of the month segment. I'm open to all things. All right, no ideas are too bad. More CGI. Only if we get Michael Bay explosions. I just need everything to blow up. Okay.
I can do that. I can do a transition scene where everything explodes between scenes.
I'll keep work. I see the more personal engagement. We did try to tune that way by bringing more people into the Zoom call. We'll try to maybe encourage a little more unmutes and specific times to chime in. More pro brewer seminars. Well, we've got a handful in the club. I even see one in the Zoom call right now, so we can always hit that up.
Out. We're gonna say, Mr. Dude,
Mr. Dude
first.
Dude.
How about the show and tell thing? We're often very close to where our brew equipment is, and there may be things that we can display on Zoom that we couldn't bring the equipment into a physical meeting, but we could show it and talk about it on a Zoom meeting.
That's a very good point. We've done some equipment seminars, but people more or less drag their stuff into the meeting, and you don't necessarily drag everything. Whereas I could go do the meeting from down in my in my garage with all my brew equipment, hold it up and go, this is what I do with it, turn it on, run it, kind of thing. That's a good, I like that idea.
I've joined Zoom calls on my phone while being on my computer at the same time, so it's not what George points out. Like, you could be in the call and for a little while and then join via your phone and give us a little tour of your brewery in your basement, in your garage, in your front room, wherever you make beer in your kitchen, via your phone if you want to join that way. All the while, we can always, it's just who's ever streaming their video will come up and we can all see it and ooh and all over the cool stuff that you have or the way you figured it out.
All right. And then for the LBG members, which is pretty much everybody still in the call at this point, are you going to nominate you or someone you know as a 2021 officer? So far, we've got 2 no's. Let's get some. I'm doing a yes, but with glitter.
But with glitter. We know who the butt with glitter is.
Yeah.
I think I already nominated like 4 people.
don't forget that we're not saying you'd have to nominate yourself. It's or someone. So have that conversation. Go, hey, John, I think you'd make a really fantastic, or, Lee, I know you've.
President.
Yeah. Angelo 2021.
Yeah.
I don't believe so. Point of order. I don't believe that there's anything stipulates that you can't. So I believe. Forgive me for saying guest speaker. I believe she said she's coming up on a AHA governor's board like term limit. But it seems to suggest that there's a sort of consecutive of that term limit. It's not a matter of like you can only ever serve this number of years. It's just like we want people to rotate out, so you have a
Yeah.
consecutive number
You
of
can
years.
come back
that you
and do
can-
it again.
Yeah.
No.
So I believe that our bylaws have a similar sort of inclusion where having served a position before and taken a break and coming back is perfectly acceptable to be in the same position.
Yeah, that's my
I believe
interpretation.
I believe you're correct, because isn't that how Dale got in last time? He's been
Dale had never been president before.
really. I thought he had like 18 years ago or something.
Nope. I don't believe so. I spoke to him before he became president, and we talked about it, and he had never served in that capacity before.
All right. Final.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw out. I think most of you that are on here know, like, I would serve if needed if there's no other interest, but I kind of like to take a few years off after being an officer for 4 years. So, like, I'm not trying to run for president. If somebody else wants to do that, let me know and I'll nominate you. Just throwing that out there.
Perfectly acceptable.
All right, we've got some beer styles coming in on our word cloud here. So if you've got some of your favorite styles, I'm just curious to see what's popular right now with people. I don't know what how the text got stuck on the screen, but it's not Haas Slides thing.
I don't know. It's on my screen too.
I'm stuck somehow. I haven't even got to this.
It should say on your screen, the presenter has changed slides. Go to slide, and you click the button. Oh,
If you're on the
next
browser, just hit the refresh and it'll do it.
Someone's favorite beer style's liquor. I can get behind that. Oh yeah, the blue button up top there, Lee. Nothing? I don't know then. Seeing stouts show up a few times. I see a couple wheats, a couple German styles.
I'll just throw in Vocally Glitter Beer and Saison.
Saisons and glitter beers. All right. And then once we see the responses slow down, we have one more question, and it's another just word cloud. There's a few more. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click to the next one if nobody's hitting submit right now.